Hi everybody, this is Anthony from When Anthony Was, and I want to go over my Schoolism course that I've been taking since, I suppose, October. Last month I went over the live stream course I took, the first live stream course I took with Jeff Watts through the Watts Atelier online program, and it was really amazing. And at the same time I was taking the Essentials of Realism course as taught by Jonathan Hardesty through the Schoolism website. And you can take this course self-taught for the monthly subscription price, which I had done already, and then I knew that it was really good, and I knew that the teacher and the program itself with the lessons was really well done and structured, and I felt I wanted to get John's critiques on my work as I did it, and I'm really glad I got to do this. So I'll explore and show you each assignment and each lesson I did and what I thought about it along the way, and I'll just kind of go off the whim like I did for my last episode where I was talking about the live stream course. So basically this is the Schoolism page, and I wasn't sure when I signed up how this was going to happen. Usually if you're signed up for a subscription, it'll say currently enrolled in self-taught subscription and whatever course you're in. And so the way it does with John's is basically the same as a self-taught, or I suppose the way it does when you're in a critique session is the same as it was self-taught, but you get your own video feedback. You also get to see the video feedback of all the other students currently taking the course, and not just a random selection from maybe the first time they did the course, or I'm not sure how they do that. But when you're self-taught, you get basically the exact same thing. And so I had already gone through each lesson, and basically if I was to click this, it would bring me to a video screen, and there would be usually 5 or 6 parts or so for each lesson, and there's about 9 or 8 lessons there's 9 lessons in this one. I'm currently on the 8th lesson, so I'm not actually done the program yet. It'll be a little while before I get there. John has given me some extended dates because of my current arm injury, which is recovering, but I've had to take it a little slower on some assignments and couldn't get everything done each week. So I'm on lesson 8, and I have 2 weeks to do that one and 2 weeks to do the next one, and then I'll have to be done the program, which is going to be good because it leaves up space for exploring more things, more art things. So, and I'm currently taking 2 more Watts Atelier live stream courses this term, which run till mid-March or the end of March. And those courses are things I will be doing videos on later on. And one is Head Lay-ins taught by Jeff Watts, and the other is Foreshortened Figures, taught by Lucas Graciano. Both Watts Atelier instructors and super great artists. And I want to say again that I really think John was a wonderful teacher. I watch his live stream. He does a live stream on Twitch every week, and so occasionally I could ask him extra questions there, and he just has a good sense of humor, and we already sort of connected on there before I did this course, so he knew it was me doing it, and he could relate to some of the things we had talked about previously on the stream while giving me feedback and things like that. So if I was going to click on video feedback, it goes straight to my video, and it shows it first before starting on a classmate video, which makes sense, is good design. And then as you hand in your assignment, you can hand in JPEGs or zip files. I've always done JPEGs, and I've thrown them in a zip file and included different process pictures along the way, which I'll show you in a minute here. But basically, I would grade myself on just the overall assignment, and then he would give me some instructions, or in the video, which is about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. This one's 46, probably one of the longer ones here, where he would go over each image I send him, and I also sent him a JPEG of questions every time, because when I was first going to hand in my assignment, I couldn't tell whether I would have the option to ask questions, or like there was it doesn't show up until you submit your zip file of JPEGs and whatever files you want for the whatever you send as the assignments. So once you send that in, then a thing pops up and it's like comments and questions, and then you can add to that. But basically that would be here, assignment comments, assignment questions. But I always had quite a bit more, and I liked to write them down as I was going about the course so that I would remember these things. So I often made basically just a notepad sort of thing, and basically like just an 8.5 by 11 sheet of comments and questions, and I would attach that as a JPEG, and he would just read the questions off of that. So just like it says here, I attached a JPEG of questions and comments. So yeah, that's basically it. And then you can download your video feedback, and so you can have it forever, I guess. Once the course ends, this will probably disappear. I'm sure it'll disappear, and then you'd have to sign up for whatever other course, like a self-taught one. I do have a self-subscription, but I was allowed to put it on hold while I do this course, because I don't need the self-subscription at the moment, because I'm busy with enough stuff. So yeah, and then you get like 25 different people's work that you can look at, and you see all their videos, so you can see what their questions were, and they're each about 30 to 45 minutes, just the same as your own critique. So it's a lot of content to watch, and it's very helpful to see these other classmates have similar issues with their art and similar problems that you will be facing doing the assignments. And oftentimes, as I kind of progressed through the course, I would maybe try the assignment, then look at these, or I would look at a few of these first if I was pretty confident that I had some lack of confidence with the assignment. If I knew that there were some things I had questions about already, I would look at some of these before starting and things like that. So you kind of go at your own way about exploring the program, but basically week by week you send in your JPEG, you send in your images and your assignments as you wish, whether it's a PSD file that kind of has layers of things he can look through, or separate JPEG attachments. And he then sends you a video pretty quickly. I remember the first one, I was so surprised that it was like I sent it in the one night, and then it was the morning the next day where I got this video feedback, and I was like, how did that even work? So it's probably like some time zone thing, depending on where John is, and difference between where I am and stuff. But it was like instantaneous feedback video of like 40 minutes, so it was like, what? Doesn't make sense. But so anyway, that's that, and I'm going to open up Photoshop and use it as my template place where I can basically bring in the different... I'm just going to close this. The images I worked on over the weeks. So let's see if I can just open this up like this. The first assignment was I used a Watts Atelier photo reference that I collected from somewhere on the Watts forum website or whatever, but they always light their models with very good lighting for getting the dark and light shapes to read clearly. So I chose this photo because I knew the assignment was based on dividing up the light and dark shapes rather than doing a construction method. If I'm going to throw this in here, I'll do some little sketches like I did in the last video just to explain what I'm talking about a little better. So basically, if I was going to draw this in a constructive method kind of way, I would end up making basically a head like like something like this, and I'm getting the construction of how it looks set up in what's usually considered like an Andrew Loomis type head. And you know, it's funny taking these courses, because I realize just how much these teachers have to repeat the same concepts over and over again, because just making these YouTube videos and just mentioning Andrew Loomis again, I've just realized I've said this before in one of my videos, I'm sure. So anyway, so you'd construct it like that, but to do it just simply getting the black and white shapes is something that is easier to do with reference, a little harder to do from your imagination. But if you can combine the thinking of looking at something in black and white shapes and basically being like, all this is light and the rest of that is dark, that's a good way to simplify something, so then you can work out the details later on, but have a good scaffolding so that you won't lose the proper shapes and the proper proportion as you begin to do the rest of your image and refine it and stuff. So in this particular image, one thing he commented on was just that this shape could be more like something like this, a block shape, or like include that as something that is a little clearer than being kind of abstract like this diamond shape. It doesn't really, if I was going to only rely on this image to refine the rest of my drawing and bring it up to a full finish, like looking like this or something, this would probably confuse me in the long run, because it's not as clear as something like that, right? So the way tracing over and making these block-ins over top of the image is a good way to, you're not struggling to get the angles right, but you're just utilizing the image to understand the dark and light shapes, and to just directly work with simplifying rather than work with also accuracy in trying to draw it straight from like a blank background and then try to get that angle right to this angle. And that's basically what the next assignment ends up to be. I'll stop scribbling and move on to the other pictures here. Basically, there's a few other ones I did here, like these ones. It's like also has nice dark and light shapes for this. And what I realized when doing this is that simplifying is difficult. So like this one, the second one, is a little more complicated than the first one. And so in the order that I actually drew these was, I did this one, and then I made it even more complicated, and I was like, okay, how can I really simplify it even more than this one? And then I ended up with that as my first simplification. And it's kind of like, if I was going to draw this, I would want to start simple and build up to complex. So you have a methodology. Nope. You're methodically you're methodically working your way up to, then you'll be at the end of the right place in the end. This one is definitely, it's a little complicated. The first one is good. And you can see, like, if I was going to zoom in on here, the way that this is drawn doesn't actually include any details about her eye, but I am getting the shape that is the dark part, which is like this part of the nose, and then it leads into that, and that's all in shadow. And so I want to indicate that, so I'm not messing up the proportion. but at the same time, I'm not getting any of the detailed eye and these things that are important, but we can add later once we have the main scaffolding in place and we're not messing with that. So that was basically lesson 1, which is understanding proportion. And I'll move on to lesson 2, which is manipulating proportion. So I took this image, which was pretty small, but it has good light and dark shapes, right? Very distinguished. Like, look at her eye; it's like very clearly a shape, and I can just work with that and look at that, and if I get that shape accurate, then I'm getting the form to read accurately at the same time. So I ended up working both drawings in, but then I then chose this guy individually because that was a complex image and I was running out of time. And I brought him up into the 3 stages. And the point of this one is that it's manipulating proportions. So I had to make the relationships. I had to maintain the relationships of, say, this is longer than this line and this is longer than that line, and I had to bring all those up, but I had to make the whole thing bigger, right? So it's a little trickier than if I was just going to draw it this exact size next to it, which I'll show you that I do that in some of the drawings. Like this is a later one, and my drawing is exactly the same image as that, so I can basically just look up and make like a straight line upwards and realize that, okay, this is in the same position as that, so I'm good there, and stuff like that. Whereas when I have to make it bigger, it becomes more difficult. Or if I had to draw this and I had to draw it smaller, then I have to do the same thing and I have to alter the way I'm doing the lines, but maintain the relationship so that the accuracy of the proportion is correct. Whew, fast talking today. Okay, so that's basically that. I was using lines all the way across here, trying to find these different measurements, and it's kind of tricky. It's a little difficult, but I got the gist of it, and yeah, that worked out quite well. So we moved on after that lesson to values, and you can look at the whole lesson structure plan that John has laid out in his course by looking at the lesson plan on the Schoolism website when you go on click on the courses link, and you can see the whole layout and what the course entails. And I found it so great. There's other courses I've taken which are good in their own right, but they're not as fundamental as John's, or the explanation of certain things seems to be lacking, and you have to have a certain knowledge of this stuff already to take those courses and understand what they're talking about. So John's explained it just so clearly that I think anyone could start from scratch and understand it, but the concepts are something you take with you through the entire process of learning art from being a beginner to a master. So in one way, I just thought, the content of the course is great by itself, and something that doing this critiqued version really helped me with, and something I'm going to take back into my self-taught subscription when I start it up again, is doing the lessons in a structure, maintaining the consistency of doing one every week or every 2 weeks, and watching the other student critiques that they offer on the website, and just really trying to understand and stick to one Schoolism lesson for 10 weeks or so, and really dive into it and learn as much as I can and practice and do the assignments as if the teacher was waiting for my assignment every week and I had to hand it in and I had to do the assignments in order and as they are kind of applied. So, but then add your own twist on it. I chose some interesting reference. This particular assignment, I actually was out of the house for a weekend, so I ended up penciling the thing in from a magazine reference on my spare time, just at a friend's house, and I used the same methodology that I did to block in those other things. Basically just looking for angles of the different things that line up, different shapes, outlines, plumb lines, which is holding basically your pencil vertical and dropping it dead vertical with the gravity to see, like, say, where this eye matches up with the bottom or the middle of this knuckle kind of thing. And you would look at that, and then you can use that to get the accurate proportion as you're drawing. And what John talks about when he goes into values, and this lesson 3 was called Understanding Values, and he goes into basically having a way to simplify values into 5 values. So the values I end up using here are like 2 values that are quite dark and close together in the dark side, and then 3 values that are one in the middle value, but then 2 that are quite light, and they're all a little lighter, quite a bit lighter than the dark values. And I have a video where I act as Joker from The Dark Knight, and I do one of the assignments for this course, which I actually did, and I sent it to John, and he watched it too. But basically, I took this image, and then I drew the values, and I simplified them. So, like, this is the brightest spot, so I have the brightest white, which is this white up here, to be that spot, and there's not really anything on this image that's as bright as that. And then the darkest spot is basically all the dark shadows. Like, this would be definitely the darkest black. And then there's secondary dark, which is like some of the stuff in here, maybe like this one would be secondary dark or whatever. But what you do is you have to group these shadows together, and by grouping them together, it makes the image read better for the viewer, instead of having something like a lot of bounce light, and you end up having, say, light on this side of the face, which has the shadow, most of the shadow in it, right? So that's why if I'm going to go back to the initial picture that I did the proportion assignment with, which was these drawings here, you light it, it's easier to see the form and read the form when the shapes of shadow and light are distinct, as opposed to if this was this way, but then there was a whole bunch of light coming off some other light source down here, then her shirt would be lit, and you'd be like, where is actually with the shadow that comes off this giant ball that makes up the mass of the head, right? So hopefully that makes sense. If not, take the course, and you'll get a better idea, because he's got whole lessons designed on what this is. I'm just going a big overview here, and if it's not clear, then I just recommend taking a class, or it takes a bit to learn this stuff. So anyway, here's another image where I had to simplify the values, and yeah, that's and he made slight adjustments when he took this image. He redrew parts of it to basically make some of the values more cohesive and make it look a little more accurate for a simplified drawing with proper values. So that's that, and I move on to lesson 4, where this is what I worked on, which was this character from the Indiana Jones movie, who is an actor. I don't know his name. Don't know if he's been in anything since he's been a kid. But he's definitely a little action star in this film, and that's a pretty big jump right here to there. But basically, I block it in as usual, using lots of straight lines. Was a big emphasis on the block in, because you don't want to confuse yourself by doing a lot of curved lines and things like that. But if you keep it very straight, even if you're drawing something that is rounded, say like the hat, I can divide it up, and I can put a straight line there, straight line here, straight line here, and then I end up with a little more boxy looking thing, but I can clearly see where things line up a little better that way. So then I start filling in values, but I have brought the darkest darks, which would be his hair, these coat shadows, the rope shadows, things like that,
and I'm going to make them lighter than they actually are. And then I'm going to take the white, which is the the brightest part, which is his hat in this, and I've actually, I wouldn't say darkened, because basically the point is I'm trying to lighten the values of everything, but I sort of make it less light. And so I don't have a full value range is the point. With this image, I basically have the darkest dark can be, and then I have the brightest white can be, and then I have everything in between to work out this drawing. But in this way, I've limited the values so that my darkest dark ends up being the color of his hair here, or the shade of his hair, and then the lightest light ends up being this, which is not as bright as the hat is in the original reference. So that's basically it, and I just went through the stages here to start working on those values. And there's a few things to point out here, is that one is his hat should be lighter. Something I realized when doing this is that when you limit your values, and I say I only have 5 values to work with, I have to sort of use the values to describe things that have multiple values, but I need to simplify it. So like his jacket here, it's not really one value or another, but it's sort of a combination of two, many values, but I had to simplify it. So the way I would make that darker than, say, this part of the jacket, but use the same value for both, would be to just add more of a cohesive value to the jacket part, but then make it all a little splotchier in the coat part here, so that it looks like it has more dark, or it is darker because it's just a little more sprayed with with some darker values, but overall it's basically the same value as the jacket. And that was an example, but this side of the jacket is actually better because that one is actually this value. This one is a darker value. But so you see here, I've got a lot of sort of just more details going on, which sort of adds it to be looking like it's a little darker. And this one looks brighter just because it's more filled in, and it's more just consistently one whole value of these 5. So again, hopefully that makes sense, but if not, just take a course. These are just teasers. One thing I realized with this too is that the edges are something I wasn't working with here. So like I don't have really softer, harder edges. Like if you look at this, these are basically just, kind of firm edges. It's not like as soft as that is for an edge. And the edges are where the values transitions happen. So when I wasn't working with edges because that wasn't the assignment, I was only working with values, I had to choose where I would end my shadows to define the form. And a great example on this image is his chin, where that is a pretty soft transition that goes into the rest of his cheek, and the whole thing is just really soft. It's like a baby's, a young face that curves quite naturally like that. But on my image, since I only had 5 values, the most of the face was this second value of the lights, but then I had to decide where to end my shadow value, and they could have been ended in different places, but that's where I ended it in this effort. And basically, it's like if I added more shadow, which I actually have near the beginning, see, like that's a lot of shadow. It changes the read of the face. It makes it look like a different image. It looks less bright and clear. I actually ended up darkening all the values of the hair and stuff in this, from that to that stage. You can see I go a little darker with those values, but it's still not as dark as the darkest dark, which is the hair in this reference picture. as dark can be, or as dark as the Batman, as I say in my Joker YouTube video about values. So that's that one, and then we move on to edges, and we start to understand edges. And with this one, I am working, basically that's my block in, so I really simplified it, and I tried to skip steps in a way and just go and start working on edges, value, and proportion all kind of right away. So I just, boom, that's a big jump to that. But I had the necessary scaffolding into just kind of go boop, right? So it's like a sculptor, and you get this basic outline, then you can throw in these shapes, and you're still in the good because you have set this up to work, and you don't have flying off random angles, and it's contained in this box shape. So that's how I started, and then I ended up throwing in these values and working that. And I left the face out because I was working on, this was supposed to be a fabric study. I just chose my own reference for the assignment. And it's a fabric study because fabric has a lot of different edge variations, so it's a good thing to study edges with. And that's where I got in the assignment. And then I marked down for John to point out where I was not really finished yet, because I couldn't finish this one, so I just ended up in this spot. But I was working in the edges, and it's like you just have to get the relationships right again. So whether it's value, proportion, edge, or whatever, it's all about the relationships and making things cohesive, but all in terms of value and maybe in terms of edge too, but basically having the relations right. So if I have something that's hard, I'm looking for some examples as I scan this image. Basically this edge here of the coat wrinkle is harder than this one. And if I go to this side, you can see it's a little harder than that one. So I just had to get that basic relation right. And then the thing works, and it looks like it's pretty accurate. Yeah, so I mean, that's the basic of edges. Just takes practice. I'm going to fast forward through edges, or this particular assignment, a little bit, and move on to the next assignment, which is manipulating edges. So for here, I started with this image, and I was drawing it below, and I had it the same proportion, so I didn't have to grow it or shrink it and understand those relationships. But I also didn't cheat, and I didn't use like ruler lines that you can use on Photoshop, and they would have perfect vertical lines that would match these things, like a grid. I didn't use a grid system. I just eyeballed this stuff, but still it makes it easier to have it completely lined up the same size that you're going to draw it as the reference. And so then I threw in all the values, and I did that pretty quickly, but I basically was focusing on the light and dark differences and trying to get that. But I did miss some areas, as John pointed out, that like this area here of my finger should actually be the same value as like this, or a little darker, but in the end. But in the beginning stages, I should definitely have included that in the lights, and that would have just been clearer for me as I continued drawing it later on. And so here's where I got in the end for that assignment, and that the point of this assignment was actually to manipulate edges. So what I was trying to do was make things softer, and I realized as I was going through the stages that I hadn't really gotten to the softening stage a whole lot so far. But basically, I tried to sort of do it, but I didn't do it to that great of an extent. Like if you look at this area of the hand here, that area of the palm it has a little more hard of a transition. Like you can pretty much see the difference between the light and dark there, almost like it's a line, right? A very soft line, but a line nonetheless. And so here I tried to get rid of that line a little bit and make it more of a just like that picture of the boy where his cheek just rounds and you can't really see a distinction very well, which would be a soft edge. harder edges like this area on the coat here where this shadow is, I then tried to make it a little softer. But I realize now that I could soften it quite a bit more, and I could soften all these edges, and like these edges that are soft, like maybe that area or something, can be extremely soft. So this is something I want to return to, and I may return to it in the final assignment, which I will get to explaining in a little while here. But basically it's a good start, but it's not finished. But it was enough to see if I was on the right track, and I just realized I could soften these edges a whole lot more to manipulate them, and yet keep the relationships right so that it still looks like a real pair of hands. The next assignment was understanding color, and this was done in April 2017, where I drew this based off this reference that John provides, and I was just laughing, and I thought I would show it here because I've improved a lot with understanding how to approach a drawing, and just like this is my block-in, but that is way too complicated to start with. So anyway, I didn't do this image. I ended up doing a Frank Frazetta study, but I saw that, and this is when I actually didn't end up finishing this color assignment the first time I went through the self-taught course, but I started it. But it's just interesting to see, look back at your old art and see the difference. So I did a Frank Frazetta study, and I chose this really colorful painting of his, which is done in oils. And who knows if it looks like this in person? It might look a lot better in the original if I were to see it. But anyway, I have this reference, so I went off the colors based on this photo of his artwork, and so this is my block-in, and I got the elephant and the monkey and the other elephant, and generally the appropriate shapes. And this also, I did the same size as the reference, so I wasn't dealing with proportion. I was just focusing on the color mainly as my main point of doing this assignment. So one thing John says a lot is to intensify the color, so that if you see something that has a certain color, you want to intense it. You want to bring up the intensity of that color, so that when you finally get to working in all your edges and things like that, then in the end the drawing won't look that desaturated because you intensified it right away out of the get-go. But if you leave it and you're like, well, I see this color, but it's actually a pretty dull looking thing, it's supposed to like a bright red, then if you paint it in that way, by the end it's going to look gray and it's not even going to stand out at all. So basically I block it in so far. A little piecey. Something John commented on is just that I didn't really, if I was going to draw this from my head as opposed to copying Frazetta's decisions that he already made for his painting, then drawing like this would be a little difficult to navigate. I could do it, but it would be easier if I had something more like maybe this set up at the beginning, where I would put in a big mass of red and a big mass of orange and a big mass of green, and just kind of get the various big portions of the drawing covered, as opposed to being a little bit more piecey and compartmentalized in the beginning. So I just kind of build this up, and I don't get to a full. This was another one I was thinking of doing, but I didn't do that one. I did this monkey one instead. I didn't get to a finish because the edges aren't worked in properly, and some of the colors are off and things like that, but I got to enough of a stage where I was happy to hand it to John and ask for critique on it, and I would always send him all these different stages just like I'm showing you, of the process, so he could understand how I was approaching the whole assignment. So something else that was funny is I noticed that as I was drawing this, that this face here, the background shape, it's not actually a face. Well, maybe it is, but this background shape of the background of Frazetta's painting looks a lot like the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. So I sent this in as well, as just like shape association is something I think I'm pretty naturally gifted at, and I can recognize these odd characters in things that aren't supposed to be characters. There's an actual word for that, and it's in James Gurney's Imaginative Realism book that he it's also just, you know, on the internet or whatever, but he writes about it in his book, and I forget the name, but it's basically when you see things in other things and you can recognize them and see them as shapes or whatever. So there's an official word, and it's kind of an interesting word. And so the last assignment here that I'm on, I have one more after this, and the final assignment is basically to do whatever you want, but to incorporate all the things you learned throughout the course, and then John will critique it. So I'm not sure yet what I want to do for that, but I'll probably I have a few ideas, so we'll see. But then this last assignment is manipulating color. So instead of drawing this image of his daughter as I see it, or as I, you know, just with the colors that they are, like blue eyes, red lips, and whatever, the assignment was to either cool the colors, so make everything that's warm. Well, so I'm still working on this assignment, and I'm not exactly sure if I'm doing it right in a way. I've watched several critiques because I felt I needed some help beforehand before starting this. But basically, you're either gonna cool everything or you're gonna warm everything. And I went with warming everything. And so this is my initial block in, and then I fix the eye and I add some details. And I start to throw in some color, and you can see my little note there. I haven't actually sent this assignment in yet, so I have no critique on this, and I'm not done it either. So you're seeing process pictures in the middle of my working on it and deciding whether I'm doing something right or wrong or whatever. But basically, I'm trying to make it warmer, so I'm looking at that blue, say like on the background, this blue of well, you know, it's bluish gray or whatever, and I'm like, okay, warmer, so it'd be like purple, right? And then I take this orange tan background wood color, and I'm thinking if I make it warmer, then it's going from orange to yellow or red. So I made it pretty yellow. And so I'm a little confused, and I'm pretty befuddled at this point. This is what I wrote as my note. But I'm really intensifying it, so it's not just a little warmer or whatever, but I'm really upping the warmth of this image, or I'm trying to, like as intense as the Frank Frazetta study I did with just those colors that are booming. And I'm supposed to just, you know, this is a pretty bright yellow. It's probably the brightest, you know, kind of yellow spot in this whole picture, or it definitely is. So I want to like make that really warm and also really intensify it. So it's gonna be a weird image, probably, and we'll see if I do it in any way that kind of makes sense, or if I'm just totally off with my colors. But so I'm still working at this, and this is where I end up in the end so far. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I don't know where I'm going. I haven't really used color at all in my art, barely at all. And I realize I'm going quite over the top with trying to exaggerate what I'm seeing here. So we'll see where it goes. Looking at this now, I think that the skin color is not really right in terms of relationship. But I'm still trying to keep the relationship of things. Looking at this, like the background is cool, but the eyes are cooler. The hair is warmer, but it's not as warm as the red or the yellow wood pieces in the background, because it's kind of a coolish greenish like hair color or whatever. And then this bottom hair, I brought it up to red, being like to make it warmer. These lips are not right. They're gonna have to be like the brightest, pinkest thing in this whole image probably, and even brighter and pinker than this dress if I keep it to that intensity. So it's a little crazy and all over the place, but I realized that throughout the course and throughout getting these critiques from John that I might as well try some new things than try some things that are a little out there maybe. And I was always trying to find my own reference and utilize my own ideas, and like he allowed me to do a Frank Frazetta study and all these kind of different things. So I saw a lot of students doing the references that he offered in the course, and I thought that was fine, but I always wanted to bring my own reference to the course and mix and match it in a way. Like I'm studying different things with other courses, so I was always thinking about those and what I could apply within this course lessons to then help me with my other courses and stuff like that. Just kind of being resourceful is how I think about this art training. So that's where I'm at with this, and I think the proportion, everything looks pretty good as far as I can tell at the moment, but we'll see what happens when I start filling this in with color. I'm trying to get the big masses in, like I talked about with the Frazetta study, and not be PC with the colors, but we'll see in the end what goes on. So I'm trying to utilize John's critiquing to the fullest, and asking him lots of questions and getting some great answers. And I would highly recommend this course if I was to go into the logistics of pricing. Is that a Schoolism critiqued course costs about $1,000 US for 9 weeks basically, or more depending on if you get some extended assignment dates or whatever. It all depends on your teacher and how they work. John was flexible, so that was nice. And for the self-taught courses, which are great too, because you get all these critiques, and I realize just how useful those critiques are. Like after doing this course, that I'm going to go back and I'm going to do courses, ones I've kind of skimmed through and stuff like that, and redo them and go week by week and do the lessons, and also watch these critiques and really try to understand what they're offering in the course. And I recommend John's course for beginners and for advanced students, because I think it's just really well structured and great like that, even without the critiquing. And when you do a self-taught subscription, it's really cheap, and they always it's like the price of an art book, but you get a month, or per month, and you get access to a whole variety. So it's like an art book that you can open up, and every time you open it up, you could pay $1 and have a whole different art book. So it's pretty great that way. Plus you get all these critiques of the students and stuff that was just so much content to look at. So even the self-taught courses are a phenomenal deal. The critiqued is a little expensive, but it is I'm really glad I got to do it. I had some financial help, so I was happy about that. But it's helped me understand how to do the self-taught better. I probably won't do too many of these, because I really like the Watts Atelier structure, and the live streams that they're offering now are cheaper. They're $450 per 10 weeks, and I think it's a really good structure. You don't have as much critiquing to watch and stuff like that, and you don't really have the lesson base. But if you sign up for their online program content, which is $100 US or $200 US if you do the painting and drawing program together, then it still works out to be like $600 for the 10 weeks, and it's still $400 cheaper than doing this, and you get so much content with your online program. It's crazy. It's So anyway, both really good. I'll talk about the courses that I'm taking right now in the future, the Watts Atelier Headlands and the Foreshortened Figures with Lucas. And we'll see what I get up to with other things, but basically this was my Essentials of Realism course so far. I still got 2 weeks left, but it's been really great and really helpful, and I have understood a lot of things I didn't understand before, and I'm glad I got to begin to explore color, and I'm beginning to try and manipulate it in this drawing, and we'll see what happens, but it'll be interesting anyway when it ends up finished. But yeah, so really glad to have gotten to explore some things like color that I otherwise have put off, for a good reason, because proportion, edges, and value are hard enough to navigate at this moment. So color is just an extra thing that's super cool, but much more difficult, adds a layer of complexity that is not really necessary at this moment for me to study. But I'm glad I got John's help with it, and we'll see what he says for this assignment and as it goes on. And that's about it for now. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos, one every month. And follow me on social media to see the different artwork I'm putting out, one a week. And that's about all. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.